All right, hello guys. Welcome to your first tutorial. Um, T02, my name is Basil, and yeah, I had a sideshow running about some of my hobbies and musical interests and games that I play so you get to know me a little bit better. And basically today, we're going to be going over flowcharts, some basic conditionals, some basic expressions. I'm going to cover any questions you guys might have regarding the assignments and a little more admin stuff, but yeah, that's basically it. And we're also going to do some live coding of the number game, which you guys should have covered in lecture. Quick note: the live stream link that I sent as an announcement, which is also included in the syllabus, that's never going to change from live stream to live stream. So you guys will always be able to use that same link every week. And also, a quick note that my office hours are Thursdays from 1:30 to 1:30 to 2:20, I think, or 12:30 to 1:20. I kind of forget, to be honest, but they're all written there on the office hours channel on Microsoft Teams and on the syllabus. So let me open up the screen. All right. So in tutorials in general, there's going to be live coding. There's going to be covering concepts that are going to come up in assignments. Like basically, a lot of the things that you guys are going to do in the assignments are going to come up as concepts in these tutorials, and that will become a lot more clear later on. Also, just as like a quick gauge, if you guys could just like let me know how many of you guys have coded before, just like a yes or no. Yeah, I'll cover how to submit the assignments for sure. Okay, all right, a few yeses, a few nos. That's not bad. So yeah, this is an introductory course, so it is going to teach you how to go right from the beginning, but we will ramp up pretty quickly. So if you have no experience programming before, the tutorials are a really great way to make sure that you don't kind of fall off the path, because it can be a little bit hard to catch back up if you're already really behind with no experience. So yeah, and I think hopefully Professor Moore would have gone over the number game in lecture. Is that true? Have you guys like heard of the number game algorithm? No. Okay. All right. Well, he was supposed to go over that, but it's okay. I'll go over it right now, anyways. Basically, what the number game is, I'm just gonna write it out here. Let's put this as a markdown. The idea of the number game is that the computer picks a random number between 1 and 100. And then the user guesses what that number is. And if the user guesses right, the game ends, they win. If the user guesses wrong, the computer tells the user whether they were too high or too low in their guess. That's sort of the main idea. So it's a really simple algorithm, and the whole point is that this algorithm will continue to loop over until the user gets it right. So technically, this game can go on forever if the user never guesses the correct answer. So what we're going to do here is we're going to build a flowchart, like a choice flowchart, which I think you guys definitely should have covered in lecture. I'm almost certain about that. So we'll make one of those, and then we're going to code it in Python on Jupyter Hub. And then after that, there's going to be time for going over submissions for Jupyter Hub and Avenue, and going over assignment procedures and assignment 1 questions and all that stuff. So that's kind of the plan for today. So let's go over the flowchart for this game. So I have Paint, and this is, this is what we're going to be using. And so if you guys remember, the things that we use for flowcharts is we have an entry point for the flowchart. So we could mark this as a green arrow or something like this. And basically anything that is a condition or a conditional expression, we use a diamond, and anything that's a statement or an execution, we use a square. So let me try and illustrate this. So the first thing we might do in this game is the following. We might print, oh, that's too small. Sorry guys, okay. So we might print a intro message. And then after that, we might store a user's guess inside a variable. Here I'm calling that variable guess. So guess takes in input from the user and stores it. And then after that, we might simply actually create a variable to store what the correct answer is going to be. So this is going to be the number that the user is trying to guess. So here we can say random integer from 1 to 100 inclusive. Cool? So, and since this is all stuff that's being done by, like this isn't a condition, it's actually a statement, we represent it in this sort of rectangular thing. And here we follow this path, and it will take us to our first condition. So after we've gathered the guess from the user, and we've stored a number as a random integer, we're gonna have to check to see what the user has picked as their guess. So we might have a diamond here, like this. And we might check to see if the guess is, we can check to see if the guess is equal to the number, but we can also check to see if the guess is not equal to the number. And basically that will just end up flipping our no's and our yeses. So from this condition, we're gonna have a branch that goes to the rest of the tree based on if the condition is evaluated as true, and a different branch if the condition is evaluated as false. So here let's just try and use guess not equal to number, and I'll explain that further once we finish. But it's basically the same thing. So here we might have if this is false, we could say false here. And so here we're going to have another statement. And so if you guys think about it, if the user's guess is not equal to the number, if that condition is false, that means that the user's guess is equal to the number, right? It would be like this sort of double canceling here, a double negative. And so if the user's guess is equal to the number, then it's game over. Game over, a user wins. And so really, this branch ends right here. But the majority of this tree is in this no branch, is if this is actually true, right? So let's put a true down here. And we'll have another branch for the true. Well, if they got it wrong, first we can, for example, tell them that they got it wrong with a statement, right? We can say, and we can tell them that the user got it wrong via a print statement, right? So we can say print like incorrect guess message. Something like that. And after that, right, if you guys remember over here, the idea is that if the user, let me check something here. This right over here, sorry, there we go. If the user is too high or too low, we have to make that distinction for them. So The next thing we're going to check after this is whether or not they were too high. So what we can have is another conditional, right? Because we're checking if something is true or false. So we're going to need one of these diamonds. And the condition that we're going to put inside the diamond, you guys can probably guess it. It's going to be whether the guess was greater than the number or not. And we can say greater than here, we can say less than. It doesn't really matter because later on we're going to cover the other case, right? So yeah, that's basically it. Just referring to our screen there. So if it's greater than the number, well, we can have another branch going off here. Actually, let's just keep the same symmetry. So we'll have the trues on the left and the falses on the right. So if this is false, then we're going to give them a message, which is saying that they're too low. Because that means that their guess was less than the number. And over here, we're going to have the same thing, except this is going to be for if their guess was too high. Because if guess greater than number was true, that means their guess was too high. So very similarly, we're going to have here another print, which tells them that their guess was too high. It's a little bit big, but yeah, here we go. And so after we print that stuff, oh, the paint is not showing. My bad, guys. Sorry, I think that should fix it. Kind of forgot about that. My bad. Cool. So hopefully you guys can see it now. Is that good? Cool. Sorry, guys. Basically, all I've done here is I've just I had this condition and I added the true or false statement. And for the true, if guess was greater than number, then we just print the too high message. And if guess greater than number is false, which means guess is less than number, we just print the too low message. Cool. And there's an important distinction to make here, is that normally you'd say, okay, well, if guess is greater than number is true, that means that the guess is greater than the number. But if guess is greater than the number is false, how does that necessarily mean that the guess is too low? Couldn't the guess be equal? Because mathematically, the opposite of greater than is less than or equal to, right? But the one catch they have to realize is that by the time we're at this branch, we've already concluded that the guess is not equal to the number. So that possibility is already eliminated, which is why we can kind of make this assumption over here that it's either greater than or less than without the possibility of the guess being equal to the chosen number. And so after this, our branches connect, because regardless of whether they guess too high or too low, we're going to end up asking them for their guess again after we've told them whether their guess was too high or too low. So here, we're going to have another statement. And here we could say something like, I don't know, print guess again message or something. And with that, we're also going to have to store their input again in the guess variable. And if this syntax doesn't really make sense too much to you, don't worry, that's all going to be explained shortly, either in lecture or in tutorial. And so here we go. Let me try and... Okay, well, I can't really adjust it too much. What I can do, however, is I can select this whole thing, bring it a bit down. Okay, so we're basically done here. Yeah, I am always the TA for Friday for the question in the chat. What we're going to do here is we're basically done. There's just one last caveat, and that's that we need some way of taking this flowchart to branch back to the beginning. because once we've taken their guess in again, we need to basically repeat this whole process. So I'm just realizing now that I kind of made this a little bit tricky because it's going to look a little bit ugly, but here we go. This is fine. Just like that. And I'm going to connect this again, and I'll show you guys exactly what I mean. So after we're over here and we take their guess again, this branch is going to go back up, right back here. And that'll flow right back here, and we'll basically we'll basically compare the guess to the number all over again, and basically run the same algorithm. So this is kind of what a flowchart looks like. The key things to take away from this is that conditional expressions and conditional tests use these diamonds, and they always contain something that is a condition. And when I say condition, I mean something that can be evaluated as true or false. So notice how guess not equal to the number is something that we can evaluate, and we can say that's either true or that's false. The guess is not equal to the number, or it is equal to the number. The same thing with guess greater than number. That is also a Boolean expression, meaning that it can be evaluated as true or false. And apart from those conditional expression diamonds, we have the only other type of entity, which is just this like rectangular sort of thing, which just contains statements or execution commands, things that you do instead of test. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. I guess if you wanted to, you could add sort of like an exit condition over here. So here's the entrance, and here's the exit. But yeah, that's basically the whole idea. So if anybody has any questions about this sort of control flowchart and how it works, please let me know in the chat, and I'll answer it. And also, as a side note, I'm going to be posting this. I'm going to be posting these pictures, and typically I'm going to be posting other tutorial content that we cover in tutorial on Avenue. So there's going to be a folder dedicated to all the content that I cover called tutorial, like T02 tutorial content or something like that. Cool. So there's a question: if user types in something that isn't a number, that's a great question. If the user puts in something that's not a number, all of these all of these conditions would fail, because number ends up being an integer, which is a number between 1 and 100. And if we try and compare something that's not a number to a number, we would get an exception or an error. But we haven't really added any special cases for that, so you don't have to worry about that for now. And the other question is, if we have time, can we see the code for this? That's exactly what we're going to do. So now that you guys have seen what the flowchart looks like, hopefully coding it is a little bit more intuitive. So let's hop over to Jupyter Hub right here. And we can insert another cell. And this one's going to be a code cell, and we're going to try and code this. Okay, so we're going to code it as a function. And the way that's going to work is we're going to basically reference our flowchart every now and then to see if we're on the right track. So let's call it number game. And we're going to have, there's going to be one thing that we actually need, and we're going to need to import a package, which I'm going to explain to you guys this later on, and this is pretty important later on, but I'll explain it, so don't worry about it too much. But we're basically importing the Python function called randint. And this is a function that we can use to generate a random integer between A and B, where A and B are some numbers, obviously, right? So this gives us access to the randint function. We're saying from the random library or package, import the randint function. So over here, we can continue with our game. If you guys remember from our flowchart, we had an intro message. So we can write an intro message, and we can say something like, welcome to the number game. Please guess a number between 1 to 100 inclusive. Something like that. And that's all good. So Lacey says, why can't we just import random? I'm going to cover the difference between import random and from random import a function. So there are some key differences here, but I'll cover them hopefully if I have time at the end of this tutorial. But for now, let's just use this first one. So after that, we're going to do the other thing that we're going to do, which is storing the user's guess. So that's going to say something like guess is equal to the user input, which is done like this. But notice that, and I hope Dr. Moore might have covered this, but when we use input to gather input from the user in Python, they type in a message in the console, and that message is always a string. So Python always stores that message as a string, even if they type in numbers. Like Python doesn't really know whether we want to use those as actual numbers or whether we want to use it as a string. So by default, all input is a string. And in order to turn an input string that is made up of numbers into an actual number, we have to cast whatever's in our input as an integer. And so we do that by calling this int function on the input. So we can keep on going, and we can store the the computer's number guess. So here we can say number, and we can use our randint function to generate a random integer between 1 and 100, and then we can store that random integer that's generated inside the number variable. And after this, here we can quickly bring up MS Paint one more time. And so see that we've basically covered this little first bit. We printed the enter message, we got the guess, we got the number. Now we're going to start doing the tests. We're going to check if the guess is equal to the number or not. So we'll go back here. And we're basically going to say if. And if any of you guys see something wrong with this, just hold on for a sec. I know it, but I'm kind of going to fix this at the end for anybody who has more experience if you see that this if is wrong. So we're going to say if guess is not equal to the number, we're going to print the incorrect guess message, which is going to be incorrect guess, something like that. Yeah, that's probably good. And then we're going to give them the other message telling them whether they're too high or too low. So that needs the other check that we had that hopefully you guys just saw in the paint. So we're going to check if guess is greater than number. And if guess is greater than number, then we're going to print that they are too high. So we're going to say guess too high. And notice that if this is false, which means we can use an else statement, then we can just print guess too low. Because if guess is greater than number is true, it'll execute this line and then skip below this whole if statement. It'll skip down to down here. Whereas if this conditional test is false, we're going to skip this part and Python will jump right to here and run this command, which is guess too low, which is exactly what we want it to do. So that's great. And so now, regardless of what they said, we're going to take a new guess in. So guess is going to be equal to the user's input one more time. And we can, yeah, so this is good. I'm actually going to do one more thing. So in the input, you can actually use a string here as an argument. to basically just have the computer print a string at the same time as it asks for input. So for our intro message here, we can just only have this little bit, and then inside the input, we could just put this in. Cool. So something like that. And then here, we can say another message like, try guessing again. And at that point, we're done. But let's take a look at our MS Paint and realize what the difference is between what we've coded and what our MS Paint has. So we basically have the exact same thing, except obviously we haven't taken care of this thing yet, this game over user who wins, and we haven't taken care of the fact that this loops back to the beginning every time they get it wrong. So what we need to do is we need to add that in. So instead of an if statement, we can use what's called a while loop. And hopefully Dr. Moore has covered that. A while loop basically loops through some sort of condition and only exits the while loop. Sorry, I put that in the wrong place. Only exits the while loop once the condition is false. So as long as this is true, it'll keep looping. So yeah, so we have a while loop there, and the if statements will stay the same. And at that point, after the while loop is over, we know that the user would have won, because as long as the user is still playing the game, they are contained within this while loop. The only time that they exit the while loop is when their guess becomes equal to the number, which means they've won. So if they've won, we want to print a winning message. So congrats, you've beaten the number game. Something like that. And that's pretty much it. So this is a function that we've made. We can call this function by just calling it with no arguments, and see that we're told to guess a number between 1 and 100. This actually came up first, but since this is the input, it pops up to the top. So input, we can say like 38, and we're told that our guess is incorrect, and we have to guess again. And our guess is too low, so we can try something like 60. And we're given the same messages, too low again, so we can go for something like 80. Too low again, you can go for 90. Too low again, 95. This time our guess is too high. So between 90 and 95, we can say something like 93, and there we go. 93 was the correct answer, and you see as soon as we got the correct answer, that loop terminates. So this while loop gets skipped all the way over to here, and we break out of the loop. And that's basically what has happened here. If you guys understand what's going on with this function definition, and this function call, that's great. But if you don't understand what's going on with this function, that's not a problem either. We can basically just ignore that for now, and you don't really need to worry about that, because Python cells will just run on their own, just like that. So you'll see here that if we run this again, if we first just, let's save this, and restart our kernel while clearing the output. If we run this again, you'll see that it works just fine, even without the function. So we can say 35, 20. Oh, that's really lucky. Okay, we got it with 20. And the point here is that it's a pretty simple game, and if you guys can notice that when we have our flowchart already mapped out, it becomes a lot easier to program this game and program any sort of logic and conditional tests that we might have, because we kind of know sort of what branches we still need to cover and what kind of loops you need to incorporate. So we have another question. When would you need the function? In this real case, you will not really need the function. The whole point of a function here would be in order to make many function calls. So if you basically had to run this code many different times, or if you had to run them in many different places, it would be a lot more convenient to have a function. And instead of writing all this code in every single spot that you need to run this code in, you could just define a function that contains this code and then just run that function with a function call everywhere you need it. But yeah, don't worry about functions for now. I honestly probably shouldn't have really done it in a function, because you guys will learn about functions later on. And you guys will get the full learning experience in lecture, followed by the live coding in this tutorial. So don't worry about functions for now. Another question, how did you do the text? In cell 1, notice that over here, when I'm on this code cell, it says code down here. But when I click on the top cell, it says markdown. So markdown is basically plain text that you can customize. So if you want to turn any cell into a text cell, you can just click over here and change this to markdown. And see, this turns into text, which is not what we want, because this has code in it, which we want to run. So that's how you do that. Cool. Does anybody have any questions about this coding of the number game that we just did? After those questions, I'm going to go over the difference between this import statement and this import statement. And then after that, I'm going to go over any questions you guys might have about the assignment process or submissions on Jupyter Hubble Avenue or anything like that. So feel free to ask any questions about this, if you have any. Okay, I don't see any questions for now. So I'll quickly go over the difference between these two import statements. And if I get any questions in the meantime, then I'll answer them afterwards. Cool. So basically, the way import statements work is that there are packages or libraries that are basically collections of functions or keywords which you can use in your code. So when I say keywords that you can use, keywords can include like variables that are predefined for you, and they can also include functions, which are by far more popular. So most packages that you import from in Python are basically these packages of functions, and you can use the functions inside that package if you import that package into Python. And what that means is that when we import random here, if we were to do that, we would basically import the whole random package, including all of the functions that are in it, and that'll give us access to all those functions and we can use them. So for example, randint is a function that generates a random integer between the first argument and the second argument, inclusive. So when we import random, we can use this. Now the difference between import random and from random import randint is that when we say from random import randint, which is what we did, we're going to be able to use randint directly. So we're basically saying only import this function. We only want to import one thing from the package, whereas this line would import the whole function. And then when you use import random, you would have to actually, like let's say we didn't do this line and we did this line instead. We would have to refer to every random function that we use with a random prefix. So this is what you do if you imported random. Whereas when you import something specifically from a package using the from keyword, you don't need to put that prefix in. So I'll put this here. I'll say you can use the imported keywords names directly. And over here, you have to refer to the imported keywords with the random dot prefix. So that's kind of the difference there. There is no different, like you will not be penalized for using one over the other as long as you use it correctly. If you try and use, for example, random, like just import random, and then you did this, right? This would not work because you were trying to refer to randint without the prefix and you imported random. So if you try to run this, restart 1 sec. You would get, that's actually not the, it's not the error I was looking for. You would get this error. You would get a name error because randint, it'll say the name randint is not defined. It's not defined because Python doesn't know what you're talking about when you say randint. If you're importing, you have to specifically refer to it with the package name's prefix, random.randint. And now if we try to run this again, you see that our game starts working again. So yeah, just please keep that difference in mind. And obviously if we use this first one and comment this one out, then we don't need this prefix. Let me look at the questions. Import error. I can't really debug that right now. I'd say try and keep fiddling around, and if you still have an error afterwards, you can feel free to send me a message on Teams, and we can try and figure out what's going wrong with that. Yeah. For the whole assignment, is it okay if we use the one that does the whole? Yeah, it's totally fine. So as I mentioned, you can use either as long as you use it correctly. And I can't connect to the Jupyter server. Are you connected to the VPN? You have to make sure that you are connected to Cisco's McMaster VPN in order to be able to reach the Jupyter Hub website. That's weird. Okay, I'm using AnyConnect right now, and I'm able to connect. But yeah, I'll try and take care of that after the tutorial as well. You can send me a message on Teams as well, and hopefully we can figure it out. Okay, so we have 10 minutes left. If there are no other questions regarding this code that we've written, I would like to direct you guys to a tutorial that I made the last time I TA'd this course. I actually TA'd this course in spring. So yeah, this most recent spring term. And that was really fun. And during that term, I made a quick tutorial video on how to submit assignments. So when you complete an assignment, you will do it on a Jupyter notebook. You will either have that Jupyter notebook from working on JHub, or you'll have it from working on a local installation of Jupyter notebook, as in like Anaconda or something like that, right? But at the end of the day, you're gonna have to submit it. So you can submit your assignments either through Jupyter Hub, if you did it on Jupyter Hub, you should submit it through Jupyter Hub. Or if you did it locally and you have the actual Jupyter Notebook file on your hard drive, on your local machine, then you can submit it via Avenue. And I made a video, which you can find on the announcements, but I'll also post it in the chat just so you guys can see it. Hey guys, I'm Basil, one of your TAs for CompSci 1MD. But basically, I go over how to submit assignments on Jupyter Hub and on Avenue for whichever purpose you might want to submit them on. But please note that you should only submit them on one of the two. Do not try and submit your assignment on both, or else a lot of issues will be caused, and you might end up getting some weird errors that give you a 0 because of the way the grading works. So yeah, please just stick to one submission method per assignment. But yeah, after you guys watch this tutorial, if if anybody has any questions or confusion regarding submission, of course you can always reach out to me with specifics, and I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. But yeah, that's actually pretty much it for the content of this tutorial. So I'm going to be covering just questions about assignment 1, if anybody has any, for the remainder of the tutorial. But other than that, it was great to see you guys, and I will see you next Friday for the most of you. So yeah, okay, let's check these out. For assignment 1, when was it released? Was there an announcement? When is assignment 1 due? Let me check real quick. I don't believe there was an assignment, which I don't think there is going to be announcements for each assignment. You will just see that on Jupyter Hub. So this assignment, for example, I believe if you go over to your assignments tab on Jupyter Hub, you should see the assignment up here. You should be able to fetch it. And the due date is the 1st of February, which I believe will be a Monday. This is UTC time, but it should be this will be 11:59 EST, Eastern Standard. So actually, this would end up being January 31st. Yeah, so Sunday midnight, Sunday at 11:59 p.m. is basically what this date is equivalent to. So unless you have any sort of special extensions or considerations from Dr. Moore, then you want to submit by this time. And I think you guys should be able to see the due date from Jupyter Hub yourself. But if not, let me know, and I'll try and figure that out. Alternatively, if you go over to assignments over here on Avenue, okay, that doesn't sound right. All right, I think this due date is a little bit messed up, so I'm actually going to make a note of that and talk to the professor about that. But yeah, the due dates will also appear on Avenue if you want to check them out. Obviously, this one's a bit wrong, but you can obviously check all the other due dates for stuff over here, so you don't need announcements for that. And you can submit them through here as well. And I show you how to do that on this submission tutorial. So next question, for assignment number 1, when I define a function and then run the assert function in the next cell, it does not output anything. Is that okay? That's a good question as well. It is okay. That's actually exactly what's supposed to happen. So let me give you a quick example right down here. Whoa, here we go. Okay. So assert statements basically make sure that something is true. So let's say we assert 3 is equal to 3. If we run this function, oh, sorry, we have to interrupt the terminal over here because it was running on this infinite loop right over here. If we run this assert statement, notice that nothing happens. it goes to a star for a second, but then it just it comes back to a number, which means that this code is running and completing. So basically what assert does is it makes sure that something is true. So its argument is a Boolean expression, aka something that can evaluate to either true or false. And if it evaluates to true, then assert does nothing. But if it evaluates to false, it'll give you an error. So for example, if we did 5 equals 3 and we ran this, we get an assertion error because this is false. So basically, if you run your assertions on your assignments and you get nothing, that means that those tests are being passed successfully. So that's all good. And these assert statements are the main way that we use to try and test to see if your function is correct. If you wrote a function, let's say you wrote a function called student function, we would test to see if the student function returns the correct answer. Something like that. And if that comes back false, then that means we know that that you got it right. But if it comes back true and nothing happens, then that means you're all good and you get the grades. Next question we have, if I'm doing it locally on Jupyter Notebook, does it save on my computer? Yeah, if you're doing it locally on Jupyter Notebook, then there should be a place that it saves to automatically. And also, it'll store it somewhere on Jupyter Notebook, but in addition to that, I believe you have this download as option. So obviously I'm on Jupyter Hub right now, but on Jupyter Notebook, I believe it should be the same, where if you go File, Download As, and then you would have to pick Notebook. The other TA, Mark Hutchinson, made an announcement about this, and all submissions on Avenue, if you're submitting locally, you have to make sure that your file type is a Jupyter Notebook, which are these IPYNB files. So please make sure that you download it and you have a file in this format. So it'll be a1.ipynb. That's going to be the format of your local submission. And if you download this, you'll obviously be able to upload it onto Avenue. The VPN tutorial on the announcement says to use SSL VPN link. McMaster says to use express.mcmaster. So I'm not too sure about that. I would say, okay, so I'm not exactly sure what you mean by McMaster says, like which part of McMaster. But regardless, I just say try both, honestly, and whichever one works, that's totally fine. Just use that. It doesn't really matter as long as one of them works. And if you find one is if you find one is faster than the other, then just use that one. Basically, just use whatever works best for you. Okay, some people are saying that one's for China. So yeah, thank you very much for that information. If I'm using Jupyter using a VPN, no, not really. So, Alifer, if you watch the submissions tutorial that I showed, you'll see that if you're using Jupyter with a VPN and you're actually connecting to Jupyter Hub, then you can submit your assignments directly from Jupyter Hub. So I show you exactly how to do that in this video tutorial, but just to quickly illustrate it, it'll be something along the lines of saving this notebook, like saving it over here, right? And then you go over to your assignments tab, and there will be the submit button. You should also click down here and validate your notebook to make sure that it has no errors. And then once it's done validating, then you can submit it. So with this method, through Jupyter Hub with the VPN, you would not need to download the actual file onto your computer. You can just submit it directly through Jupyter Hub because the file's already on the server. But yeah, I strongly recommend watching the video if you have any confusion regarding submissions. So does anybody have any other questions regarding assignment 1 or submissions? I'll stick around for a couple more minutes, but if nobody has any questions, you guys are all free to go, and I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys next Friday for tutorial 2. All right, yeah, sweet, no problem, guys. And keep in mind that I have office hours. We actually all have office hours on basically every day of the week. So feel free to use those if you ever end up needing them. And the course actually gets pretty challenging, so if you have no experience, you might find those very useful. And of course, all the TAs are available for you to ping on Microsoft Teams. So feel free to reach out to us on Teams or by email if you have any questions. That's all. Thank you guys very much, and see you guys next week.